Hi everyone, this is Awais Khan, and welcome to the first episode of my new Instagram live show, Talking Books with and Publishing with Awais Khan. I came up with this idea because literally everyone these days is in some sort of quarantine. So I thought that it might be a good idea for everyone to uh, get some time. I think everyone has a lot of time these days in order to sort of watch these videos and probably write and learn as much as they can. And I'm just today being joined by the wonderful Alex Chaudhary, who goes by the name A. Chaudhary, and she's a fantastic author. And I'm just gonna add her to the chat, and I'm just gonna get my headphones. Oh, there she is.
You broke up for a
Hi,
minute.
Alex.
Hi.
Yeah, I just went to get my head. Right. So can you hear me properly?
I can. It's just breaking up a little bit, but hopefully it'll sort
Yeah,
itself out.
yeah, it should. It should. I have a good internet connection, so I don't see why not. So thank you so much for joining me for the debut episode of Talking Books and Publishing with Awais Khan. It's
Oh, it's
really nice.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm glad you took out the time, and I'm just gonna spend this time, spend a moment to introduce you to the. You might need to flip the cam. Okay, we'll flip it. So they're saying that we might need to flip it, so we'll gonna do that. So it has to be on the other mode,
Oh,
right?
you told me it was landscape.
I know, I did. I thought that maybe landscape would be a better idea. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
Okay, it should be fine.
I'm gonna try that.
Yeah. Yeah, so now I can't really put on the headphones because they're on the bottom side. Okay, so
I have to leave you for 1 second to sort that out, and I'll
yeah,
be back. Okay. Sorry.
okay, no problem. So any for people who don't know, Alex Chaudhary is the author of some really good crime novels in the of The Abduction, which is also a crime novel, and it's the second part of the Maddie Cramer and Jake Carver series in the UK, and that's also published by Loom Books. Hi, Nazok. It's really nice that you could take out the time to be here. I'm really glad to see you here. And so, yes, now it's perfect, Alex. Thank you so much for doing it.
Not very
Right.
tech.
So, yeah. Yeah. Yes. So I was thinking that since we all have a lot of time on our hands these days, let's sort of talk about first of all your writing journey. And since you're a crime author, I thought we might take this opportunity to get some tips from you. Because a lot of people in Pakistan are not crime authors, and they don't. A lot of people struggle with writing crime. So I thought that this might be a good idea to sort of uh, get sort of an idea of that. So let's start with first of all the fact that you're published in the UK by Loom Books and
Mhm.
you're a crime author. So what got you into the crime genre? So what exactly was the inspiration behind it?
I've always loved crime thrillers. John Grisham was a big hero of mine. I've always loved the page-turning nature of the crime genre, the suspense, the red herrings, twists and turns. I've just always, I was a lawyer myself before, and I've just always loved that genre. It's not always the prettiest of writing, like a lot of literary fiction, but it keeps the reader engaged. It's very challenging as well. I always like a challenge, and I think crime writing is a big challenge, not just for the writer, but also for the reader. It's a puzzle, And if the writer does his job, it's a puzzle that you shouldn't solve right until the last minute. So
Oh.
main reason.
That's yeah, that's the thing. That's the problem I have. My agent, hi Annette, I just saw your message.
Hi.
She's here, Annette Crossland, who's our agent, and she will be joining us at some point for an Instagram live session as well. And she's going to be offering some tips to all you aspiring writers out there. Yes, that's what I used to tell Annette as well. She'd always say that why don't you write a crime novel? You know, you do have
Mm,
that suspense thing going for you. But I'm like, I just can't get it. I can't imagine holding the suspense till the last page. It's very difficult.
that's the thing.
And
Uh,
yeah,
um, I think with other genres, you've got more leeway, and you can. Whereas crime writing, it follows a very methodical process, and obviously the reader is looking for a particular experience with the crime novel, and that's the challenge of solving the crime and making sure it all ties up in a neat and tidy way and a believable way. So I think that crime writers have to follow sort of certain rules to ensure that happens, and you have
mm,
to have those rules in mind as you're writing. So it's yeah, it's very challenging. I mean, for example, the plot.
yeah,
Plot is absolutely key to crime writing. It's got to be plausible.
mm,
Every plot point has to be on point and make sense. Otherwise, it's just
yeah.
not going to be believable.
Absolutely. I'm just going to break you here by telling you that we have our good friend Surjit here as well.
Hi,
And he's
Sajid.
been leaving some really nice comments so thank you so much everyone for joining us today. And I have some really nice questions for Alex, which will help you all, I think, in writing because she really is a very good writer. And I definitely ask you guys to check out her novels, The Scribe especially, which is really good. And it's published by Loom Books in the UK, and it's very easily accessible. You can get it from Waterstones or Amazon. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So it's available very easily. So it might be tough for Pakistanis to get it, but yeah, most of the people in the UK, or if you have people in the UK, you can get this. So one more thing that I had, I had this really question that's been niggling at me for a while. How do you get the procedure right? I know you're not a policeman or policewoman or anything like that, but how do you get that procedure right, like the due process of a crime
Well,
scene or something like that?
particularly if you're writing a police procedure, you've got to be completely on point because if you're not, you're going to get picked up, and that's the worst, nightmare for an author if they get picked up on an inaccuracy. So obviously we're lucky with the internet these days. We can get a lot of information off there, but I think for me, in my last book, actually, I got expert advice on some police procedure points, actually from my fellow author Roger Price, who's
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
the loveliest
He's
guy,
an ex-policeman, isn't
a
he?
brilliant writer, and he's an ex DCI. So I actually
Yeah,
got advice from him for the abduction,
yeah.
and I also got forensic advice from an expert, and that was absolutely invaluable because she really picked me up on a couple of things and made sure my novel was a tighter novel and a more believable novel.
Hmm.
That's
Following up on that, do you think it's easily asking these people is fine because a lot of people get annoyed if you ask them these kind of questions. So do you think that people are open to this kind of thing? That would policemen want to offer advice on this?
yeah, yeah, definitely, I think so. I mean, a lot of them obviously charge for their services. So if they've sort of retired, it's a sort of way of earning a bit of money. I mean, why should they
Oh
give
yeah.
free? It's their time.
Mhm.
It takes a
True.
lot of time to produce the report.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hmm.
I think people are willing to do it. They want to make sure that you get the facts right, of course. It's their profession, so they don't want you sort of misrepresenting the way things go. In fact, I've
True.
heard stories where professionals have picked up on crime dramas on TV where they tend to bend the rules a lot more than even writers do, I think, so and get away with it. The, for,
Oh really? I didn't know that.
the
I
forensic
absolutely didn't. So,
the forensic advisor that I who helped me with my last book, she said it really niggles her sometimes when the
hmm.
TV gets it completely wrong, but they get away with it. Whereas in a book, you can't get away with it so much.
Oh yeah. Tell me about it. I mean, I still get messages from some people that I might have sort of made a few mistakes when writing in the company of strangers. It's not even crime.
Yeah.
Some people, sort of try to trip me up that this doesn't really happen. I'm like, oh, okay,
I
sorry, no, I'll be
I mean,
more careful next time.
you have to
But we have this. Yeah,
fiction as
go ahead.
well. And also you don't, if you make it too prescriptive, then that's boring. So you need, I think
Exactly.
you need to know that you need to sort of be a bit more, have a bit more leeway with what you say, just to make it
It's
interesting.
important to have, yeah, it's important to have creative liberty,
Yeah,
right? Some sort of creative liberty. That's why we all write.
yeah.
And yeah, so I have this really good question from Arij, who's actually reading your book as well.
I,
She asks that does being a lawyer also help you with writing crime?
yeah, definitely. I think there's certain similarities between being a lawyer and writing crime. I mean, attention to detail, um, the research that I have to do in law. I think it gave me a lot of key skills that helped me to become a better crime writer. As a lawyer, when you draft statements, witness statements, you have to be very precise. You can't misrepresent the information. So the kind of skills that I learned as a lawyer
Mm,
helped me as a crime writer. I wasn't a
yeah.
crime, so I didn't know a lot about sort of criminal procedure, but I know the way the law operates, and obviously I did a law undergraduate course crime was one of the courses that I took. Um, so that gave me a sort of general good background in that. Yeah, but also
And
yeah,
so we have this. Yeah.
carry on.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Go ahead.
um, when you sort of, I was a litigator, and obviously the process that you follow as a litigator is quite a logical one. It's a step-by-step
Mhm.
process, the different action that you take at different times, and I think crime writing is like that as well. You need to, carefully map out the client's case in law, just as in crime writing, you carefully map out your plot.
Mm.
So yeah, they're all.
And yeah, following up on that, do you think it's more intriguing? We have this question that is it more intriguing to have a female character who breaks the mold rather than a male one?
Breaks the mold. How do you mean breaks the mold? Do you think just?
Breaks the mold as in, more who's very intrepid and who sort of goes against the rules or something like that.
I think so. I think it's, as much as we like to believe that it's we have it's the 21st century and women have more equal rights with men. I think it's men still do tend to have the upper hand in that sense. So I think it's definitely more interesting. That's what I tried to do. My key character, Maggie Kramer, is a lawyer, and she's very gutsy. She's very gung ho. She won't be curtailed by the normal rules, and if she smells a crime, she's going to go and investigate it, and she doesn't care. So it's, yeah, she's
Yeah.
definitely a lot more. Yeah, she's more adventurous than I am, that's for sure. But yeah, that's what I try.
Wow.
And she's,
Well, I mean, if you're saying this sitting in the UK that even now women don't have as many rights as men do, I shudder to imagine what's it like in Pakistan. I mean, I know it's really bad, but I had no idea that even in the UK there is still disparity.
oh, absolutely. And I think that's the problem
Yeah.
for women when they get high up in the law. It's sort of, they have to make the decision whether they, go all the way. Do they sacrifice having children, or do they take a back seat from their job because they've had children? It's
Mm,
tricky, tricky thing.
true. Yeah, Arij says that this might have been a sexist question, but to be honest, in my defense, this was someone actually asked this question. I didn't. Yeah, but yeah, so moving on, I wanted to ask you that you're published in the UK. So how difficult or how easy was it to get published?
In one word, it is tough, unbelievably tough. And you know this more than anyone. Um, when I first started out, I had no idea that it was going to be this hard. You think you write a book, you're pretty pleased with it, you'll send it off and it'll get published. No,
Hmm.
you have to have a very thick skin. You have to be prepared for rejection, and you have to really believe in your work. And if you do that, I strongly believe you will get there eventually. But you need to have those qualities, and you need to be resilient. Um,
Hmm.
to start with, most publishers, maybe a few smaller publishers, will take a submission from an author, but generally you have to go through a literary agent. So the process is, first of all, you have to find that agent, you write off to them, you send them the first 3 chapters generally of your novel, a synopsis, and then you wait. And the waiting is an
Mm.
absolute, and you could send
Tell me about
submissions.
that.
You know, I
Yeah.
so many submissions, and it took me, how long did it take me? Nearly 5 years to get an agent. So
Really?
yeah,
Oh God.
yeah,
I shouldn't be saying this because it took me quite a long time to get an agent as well. So I shouldn't be
yeah.
expressing this surprise. But what
And
the reason I do express this shock is because you're such a good writer, and
well,
it's shocking.
no, thing is, the thing is, there are just so many people writing, and there's a lot of agents, and
Mm.
it's a very subjective process. You know, like other
Yeah.
industries, I became a lawyer, I did my exams. You know, if you do your exams and you're pretty smart, and you'll get a job. But with
Mm.
writing, it's very different. It's so subjective. What one person likes, the
Mhm.
other person might not like. It's
Yeah.
about catching them on a good day. Um, so yeah, you just have to keep going and hope that you hit the jackpot with one of them. But then once you have an agent, that's just the beginning of the story, because then the agent has to find the publisher, and
Yeah.
which is the same
Yeah,
thing.
that it's literally the tip of the iceberg, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's when I was at Faber, everyone we all used to be hung up on getting an agent. We'd be like,
yeah,
we just need an agent in order to succeed. And the
yeah.
people at Faber would tell us that, please hold your horses. It's only the tip of the iceberg. And I wouldn't believe it. I like the day I got my agent, like Annette signed me on, and I
Yeah.
was like literally hoping that the coming week I'll have a deal.
Me, that's
So
how gullible we were.
yeah,
Naive, not gullible,
exactly.
naive.
Yeah, you learn it the hard way.
Yeah, you have to,
And
and not take it to heart, because it doesn't mean you've written a bad book. It just means that it wasn't for them, and you just have to keep believing
yeah,
in yourself, keep improving your writing. And I would say to any author who's waiting to hear back, in that time, keep writing. Write something else, whether it's a book, whether it's a blog piece, whether it's designing your own website. Do something else to take your mind off the pain of waiting for that
I
response.
know. No, I totally agree with you here because it's just so difficult and it's like soul crushing. The
It is.
rejections you
It
get
really
from
is.
agents, from
Baby, it's your story. You've put so much. I don't think people sometimes realize how much work goes into writing the novel, to rewriting it, and sometimes you can spend money on getting it professionally edited. You pour your heart,
yeah.
soul, and money into it, and to get rejections, it's really hard, really hard. So
Once again, it's an overused statement, but I'd say tell me about it. But yeah, there was a very interesting question here from one of the viewers that you didn't. I know you didn't start off as a crime author, so you self-published first, and those novels went on to become huge successes,
the
and you
first,
earned a lot of money from that. So,
yeah.
do you think that helped you get an agent and publisher afterwards?
Yes, I think so. I think it showed that I could sell books, and it showed that I was committed, and the good reviews that I got certainly helped. It's got to help. It's common sense. And I definitely think, if all else fails, self-publishing is a great route that's open to authors these days. I mean,
Mhm.
30 or something years ago, that wasn't possible.
And
And there have
and
stories of people actually getting picked up through that mode. So yeah, definitely.
yeah, I
I
mean, for the aspiring authors watching right now, how much do you think it costs to self-publish a book?
I can't remember sort of off the back of my head, but it depends. I mean, my husband's a computer whiz, so he helped me design my own cover, and he did all the proofing for me,
Oh, wow.
like that, converting. I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Converting sort of
You got lucky there, didn't you? With Chris.
very lucky.
He's a
Um,
photographer as well. So just let me tell the viewers that
this is
yeah,
true.
in addition to being an awesome lawyer in his professional life, in his day job, he's also a fantastic photographer. I think he's like a jacks of all trade, isn't he?
That's for sure. Lucky, but
So,
I mean,
yeah.
you can obviously employ companies that will help you with that. I mean, I would say probably 2,000 to 3,000 pounds you could spend up to that in getting a cover
Wow.
proofing done, getting the copy editing.
Wow.
So
That's quite a lot of money.
but at the end,
So, for people,
all the royalties go to you. So once you've had that upfront
yeah.
cost, you know, you're not giving any money to a publisher. So, but then of course, on the flip side, you have to keep marketing the book yourself. And that's another
Hmm.
thing you could do. You could pay a publicist to market your book, but that's more money. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's tricky.
So yeah, that's the thing. So for people in Pakistan who are watching right now, so 2 or 3 thousand pounds means 4 lakhs to 6 lakh rupees. It's like 400,000 to six
Mm,
hundred thousand rupees, Pakistani rupees. So it's quite a lot of money. So that is why it's very important to write a good thing, write a good novel, edit it as much as you can. And someone asked a question whether whether you can get it professionally edited. Yes, you can. You
mm,
should get it professionally edited if you're not a proper editor yourself.
yeah,
So send it out to agents, and if you get an agent, that's very good because that agent will work on getting you some money for your book. So that's very important in the at the end of the day to get some monetary reward for what you've done, all the work you've put in. But your actual work has to be worth it as well. And so I have one very good question here from someone. Can you tell us a little bit about your daily writing schedule, and do you have any quirks while writing? Oh yeah, interesting.
I don't. I'm quite boring actually. I don't have any quirks. If I'm in the throes of a novel, I'll sort of. I mean, first thing in the morning, I will take my boys to school. I'll come back. I'll do some kind of exercise just to get my brain going. I find that very good to get the endorphins going and to sort
Mm.
of focus my mind. And then I'll go up to my study, which I'm sitting in right now, which overlooks the garden. And then if I'm in the throes of a novel, I probably write for about 4 or 5 hours on the trot. I did that with most,
Wow.
yeah, if I'm really into it. And I don't like noise. I don't like radio, TV. I know some people like lots of noise or background, but I'm not really one of those people. But obviously, if I'm editing or if I need to meet a deadline, then I'll
Mm.
work all kinds of crazy hours, which I did actually for the scribe, because I had quite a big editing job thrown at me at the end, James.
Yeah. Can
um,
if you will, I'd like to borrow your brain for a few weeks. I'm just to write down my next novel. I need this kind of discipline because I think, the
but
most undisciplined writer. And yeah, so that's really good.
yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
like some authors, when they have an idea, they'll do, they have this spider diagrams and they'll have really pages and pages of notes and massive character descriptions. And some authors will have a vague idea and just start writing. So I think everyone's different.
Mm,
There's no set formula. It's whatever works for you, I think.
mm.
Definitely. And I have to write in that
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
My boys come home and make lots of noise. So.
Mhm. So Surjit asked the question, how do you write your characters? So what can you tell us about characterization?
I think for characters, it's really important. I mean, I was going to say actually with crime writing, it's really important to establish your lead character early on. If it's the lead detective, for example, it's very important to 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 have them early on because obviously the reader is going to go through the process of resolving that crime with the detective. So it's very important to establish him or her up front. And you want to make them no one likes a boring character. You need to have something different about them, something quirky, something even dislikable about them that's going to make the reader interested. I think that's really important. You don't always have to have a likable character. You want an interesting character, and I think that's important.
Oh wow. That's very good advice. And we have the queen of literature in Pakistan. I mean, Mina Malik. She runs a very good show, and she's
Uh,
for writers and for she has a very good literary show in Pakistan. I think the only one probably, and she's really good. And so we're very privileged to have her here today. And but yeah, I mean the thing you said about quirks, I think that's very important for a main character to have that quirk because I find myself relating more to a crime when I'm reading a crime novel, I find myself relating more to the main character when they have some sort of flaw. I don't
yeah,
like the person who's like perfect, you know. I don't
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you write your characters, you can take inspiration from people you've known, obviously, in the past. Obviously, you don't say this because you don't want to be held up for defamation or anything like that.
Oh
But
yeah.
get inspiration from
Definitely not.
everyday life,
Yeah.
characters you see on the television. I think the writer is
Yeah.
always thinking, how to use potential things they come across in their own lives to fit them into their
Yeah.
crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think authors earn little enough without having the threat of, libel or that, looming over us, you know. So, so yeah, and yeah, I mean, what advice would you what would you offer? No, before going to that question, I want to ask you one very important question. Have you read any Pakistani literature,
I read
like
yours.
apart from my book?
No, but I must read more. I must read more, definitely. I've read,
Yeah.
obviously,
Well,
you've given me the option of reading your next book, The Honor Kill, absolutely fantastic. So
oh
I
yeah,
hope that people will get to read. Um,
I
but yeah,
know.
I must read more. It's just finding the
Yeah.
time. That's the thing. If I'm not writing, and obviously I have two young boys, so
Hmm.
I need, and obviously I read a lot of crime thrillers because I would, that's part of the advice I'd give to any aspiring crime authors is read a lot of the genre that you want to write in. Read a lot of crime thrillers because you'll learn so much from the top crime authors, just in
Hmm.
the way they write, ideas. It's really important to read a lot of
Hmm.
that of the genre
So,
you're interested in.
yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't be the right person to make a lot of recommendations about Pakistani novels, but maybe the viewers can make some recommendations for you, and maybe you can, get to know Pakistan a bit better. So, can you see the comments though?
I can, yes. I'm
Oh,
trying
okay.
to.
Then that's fine. Then you can probably, once the session ends, then you can go back to it and, sort of check out the
Absolutely.
amazing recommendations people will send you.
I know how
So,
technical.
yeah. So, yeah, that's a very interesting question we have here from Meher Hussain. She asks, what makes a crime story compelling, the plot or the characters? Ooh, now that's a good question.
I think both, definitely. As I said at the beginning, I think plot is absolutely key. Tight plotting, it's got to be plausible. It's because the plot is obviously what moves the story along and keeps the reader engaged. So I think it's really
Hmm.
important in crime to establish the crime early on because you want to draw the reader in and you want to compel them to read on, and work out who's responsible for the crime. But obviously, characters are important because, particularly someone like the lead detective, because they're going to be the people that are solving the crime, and you want to go along for the ride with them. So they're both equally
Hmm.
important, definitely. But yeah,
Hmm.
but plot is really key to keeping the action going. And I
Hmm.
think when you write your plot, I think in crime, the way people write, it's quite a sort of, short, sharp, snappy sentences, punchy dialogue style to crime writing that differs from maybe
Hmm.
literary fiction. As I said before, it's not always the prettiest, but it keeps you going, it keeps you turning the pages, and that's what's very
Hmm.
special about crime writing.
That's what's
Art in
important with
itself.
crime, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be? This is like my golden question. What would your advice be for an author who's just starting out or an aspiring author and someone who wants to devote all of their resources towards writing? Would you recommend that?
Sorry, you broke up during the
Yeah.
question. Just say
So
it
my
again.
question was that would you recommend, what would you say to an author, an aspiring author who's just starting out, and what advice would you give them? And would you recommend them dropping everything they're doing just to uh, work on their writing?
Well, if you can afford to drop everything you're doing, that's fine. If you can't afford to drop everything you're doing, then probably not. But I'm sure you could carve out time in your day to write. Um, I know a lot of people that before they became full-time authors, they would make time to write at the weekends or the evenings, whenever they could. I think it's really important to write something every day,
Hmm.
whether it's 500, 2, 3,000 words, just to get the muscle memory going. That's really important in writing.
Mm.
It's important to read widely. Perhaps do a creative writing course. I know you did one. I'm sure that that was really
Oh
beneficial
yeah,
to you.
I'd definitely recommend that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
You
we
can
have
take
this really,
actually take creative writing courses in crime as well if you're
oh
specifically
yeah,
interested in crime.
true, that's true.
Another thing you can
And
do.
so we have this really good question. So two questions actually. It's one's from Minna. It's is mapping a crime story plot different from any other regular plot? And there's one from Meher who says that does the crime need to be solved in the end? That's a very interesting question actually. So let's first things first, is mapping a crime story plot different from any other regular plot? What do you think?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think, as I said before, you need to follow a sort of very methodical process. There's certain rules the crime writer has to follow. As I said, establishing the crime early on to engage the reader, establishing the lead character earlier on because you're going to solve the crime with them. I think it's important not to introduce the culprit too late because then it's not
Hmm.
really believable to the reader that they could have been a suspect. So I think you need to
Ah,
do that. Otherwise, if they appear in the last 3 pages, you're like, this guy never appeared, so how is that plausible? And I think
yeah.
you need to make sure that the crime and the motivation for the crime is believable. I mean, can this character not only emotionally, but is he physically capable of doing this crime, or she or he, whoever?
Hmm.
So that's another thing.
That's very interesting.
And
Yeah.
definitely, I mean, in crime, there are certain things you can do to make the story more interesting. Obviously, the classic thing is the red herring, throwing the reader off guard. You need to think about all these things as you're writing. What can I do to make them believe this guy's committed the crime when in fact it's someone else entirely? Another great device is the twist. Everyone loves um, particularly in psychological thrillers, and that's another good thing another thing that writers have to bear in mind to make it more interesting, to make you keep turning the pages. So
Oh yeah. That's very good advice actually. Thanks, Alice. I might just start writing a crime novel myself, given all this advice. You should be charging for it actually. I'm sorry I got you here for free. I
oh
should have paid good money for this.
the first
But and finally, the last here is that does a crime need to be solved in the end for a crime novel?
I think generally yes, particularly in a police procedure. I think the reader would be very disappointed if it wasn't solved satisfactorily at the end. I think with the psychological thriller, you've got a bit more leeway possibly. Um, but I would say it does have to. I think every reader, when they read a crime book, they want the puzzle to be solved. Definitely, I think that's the basis of crime, really. So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. I mean, I'd be very pissed off if someone sort of, wrote, if I was reading a crime novel and it ended up, on a sort of cliffhanger or something, I'd be really angry at that. So you're right, I guess.
absolutely.
So yeah. So if anyone has any final questions, yes, so can you recommend a good book? So what are your recommendations? Just recommend a good book to the people here.
Good crime story. Well, as I say, I mean, when we're talking about the greats, John Grisham, Time to Kill, The Firm, those type of books. But recently, I've been reading some really good books, like The Silent Patient. I really enjoyed recently.
Mm.
I'm reading The Hunting Party at the moment. I'm really into my psychological thrillers at the moment um, because I love the way psychological thrillers sort of explore human nature and the dark side of it. So yeah, I love those kind of books as well.
Hey. Excellent. I mean, so once the Tamworth Book Club asked a really good question about what we're currently reading. So what are you currently reading, Alex? I'll just bring my book, the one I'm currently reading.
The Hunting Party. Which is a really good book. Um, yeah, Sujit recommends The Puppet Show, definitely. uh,
Yeah,
um,
so what I am
good Agatha
reading.
Christie. You can't beat a good Agatha Christie for a classic crime whodunit novel, definitely.
Hmm. Surjit recommends Black Summer and M.W. Craven's book, The Puppet Show. Yeah, I've heard so much about The Puppet Show. I really want to read it, but it's not available in Pakistan. So I'm just going to get my copy when I'm in the UK next.
Oh
So
no.
what I'm reading right now is this. It's The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. and it's such a good book. I mean, I read Beloved when I was in college, so it was many years ago.
Mm.
But this book is so good. I'd recommend it to everyone. It's a lovely book. The Bluest Eye. She's a wonder. Toni Morrison, amazing sort of person, amazing writer.
I'm
And the
looking
second,
forward to Steve Kavanagh's new novel as well.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
He writes about Eddie Flynn as the main character, and he very much writes in the style of, although he's from Ireland, all his novels are set in America with an American protagonist, a lawyer
Mm,
protagonist, Eddie Flynn, and I love his style of writing. It reminds me of Britain
mm.
actually, and he's got a new novel coming out called 50/50, I think, so I'm going to be reading that. That's for sure.
Oh wow. And the one I just finished actually was this one. I got a proof copy from Juliet Mushins, who's a very good friend of mine. She gifted me this copy. It's a book by one of her clients. It's called The Illustrated Child, and it's by Polly Crosby. And it's such a magical, a very. If you can just look at the proof, it's such a nice proof. It's a very magical novel. It's coming out in June or July, and I have never read something that's so emotional, so visceral, so human. I really loved it. It's a really good book, and I definitely recommend it to people. I think it's coming out this summer from HQ Stories. And yeah, so I really enjoyed today's session. And Alex, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to people and introducing yourself to your Pakistani readers, prospective Pakistani readers.
Yeah. One thing I would say that I forgot to mention with crime, I think it's really important to have a strong hook and to also think of something different, obviously.
Mm,
You need a unique selling point because it's such a crowded genre. There's so many people writing crime. It's extremely popular, but there's a lot of crime writers out there. So if you can think of something different and don't be forced into going with the trends because what might be popular when you one year might not be as popular when you finish writing that novel.
oh,
So
oh God,
you need
that's very bad. Yeah.
so you need to just write from the heart what an idea that comes to you and not necessarily be influenced by the current trend, definitely.
Mm. I'd agree with that totally. And we have Faika Mansab here as well, who's a viewer for this session, and she's a very best-selling author, and she's going to be one of our guests for the coming episodes, hopefully.
Hopefully,
Uh,
well.
yeah, I mean, you missed her. She was in London just now. She was doing her master's in London, and you just missed her. She just
I
came back to Pakistan. So,
know this nightmare.
yeah.
Hopefully, we can all meet up again.
I know it's horrible, isn't it? I mean, I just don't know what to think of this Corona thing. It's like eating up the world, bit by bit.
Surreal, isn't
And
it?
yeah, I just hope that things get better soon, and we can all, socialize and meet each other, and,
Yeah.
most importantly, hug each other or shake our hand, shake hands and stuff.
All things in life, isn't it? Definitely.
Yeah, yeah. It's just it sort of reminds us how much we've taken for granted, and when these things are snatched away from you, you realize that there was so much you'd taken for granted.
Absolutely.
And yeah, but yeah, thank you so much once again. And tomorrow we have a very special guest. We have Sean Coleman, who's a very big publisher in the UK, who's going to be joining us. So all of you people have your questions ready for him if you want to get published. So he's the publisher at Red Dog Press. That's a very emerging and very well-known publishing house in the UK, and so we all hope to see you. It's going to be at 10 p.m. tomorrow, Pakistan time, which is like 6 p.m. UK time. And yeah, so I'm just hoping to make it a regular thing so that we can all keep in touch.
It's great to meet you,
Go
to
ahead.
see you both too. Getting
Oh,
to
yes, absolutely. Thank you all so much for joining in. And I'm just going to close the session, unless Alex, you have something more to say.
I don't think so. I think we've covered quite a lot. I'm sure I could have thought of
Yeah.
things, but
And yeah, my last piece of advice is go and buy Alex's books. You won't regret it. Get the scribe, get the abduction, and they're also really brilliantly packaged and printed. The covers are really beautiful. I mean, the content is
great
equally amazing,
describe.
but the cover is really nice, and everything from A to Z, it's all very pretty. So, and thank you so much for everyone
And
to everyone for joining in.
mention, there's one more thing
Sorry?
that I don't know if you
Yeah.
know, but Luma publishing a new crime anthology, which is coming out to
Oh,
pre-order on the
yeah.
9th. It's an anthology of short stories by 10 of their crime authors, including me. And that's going to be available from 1st of May, and it's called Given in Evidence. So I'm quite excited about that.
Oh, I know, I saw the cover. It's such a nice cover and really excited
Uh,
to read your story and hopefully
uh,
buy the book. And I hope that everyone else today will also be buying this book. And thank you all once again. And we're just going to turn this off and see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Pakistan time, 6 p.m. UK time. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.